Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's transit report starting Monday, January 1st. Well, I will be traveling on January 1st, so I'm actually pre-recording this on Saturday, December 30th. Sorry I won't be available to answer your questions and hear your comments this week, but I hope you enjoy the report. There's a lot going on up in the sky, and I look forward to sharing with you about it. Now, the first thing to talk about is being January 1st, most of the world or all of the world will be celebrating the new year today. But we know from human design that the rave new year, as we call it, actually doesn't start for about 3 weeks. It will take place this year on January 22nd, and I will be doing a Rave New Year report as we get closer to the 22nd. But just to emphasize that it doesn't start the new year, the Rave New Year, until the sun goes into gate 41, which is the start codon for a new experience. It's in the sensing circuitry. So the Rave New Year and the starting of a new annual solar year is in about 3 weeks. So that's important to recognize. So many people will be thinking this is the time to start the New Year's resolutions. This is the beginning of the new year. But in actuality, it's a different stage, a different period. These next 3 weeks are a beautiful time, actually, to reflect on the past year of 2023. What do we feel about that? To reflect and review, contemplate, almost sort of a rest period in that sense, which is very important, right? Our bodies need rest, our minds need rest, and very supportive as we prepare for the Rave New Year to think about what all that means to us. What are the true values inside of us? What is the deep inner core of who we are, and how do we imagine next year we might be able to express that? So you'll hear that maybe in some of my sharings as I go through the transits this week, that there's some real important imprinting coming in from the transit field that can help us ask ourselves these questions. And so we'll take a look at that. Looking at transits, to me, I think it's so valuable for two reasons why I do it. Is one, because these planets up there, they are the imprinting agents of our body graph. Right? The planets, the neutrinos pass through them, and that planet actually is where the location is what turns on that gate and that line. So they are the imprinting agents. So they're very powerful. And in that sense, they live inside of us. We have thousands of years of observing the planets through astrology and other modalities, but we can talk about the quality, the mythology of these planets and how they relate to us, because they are not just pieces of matter up in the universe, they are actually also inside of us. And so looking at the transit field and seeing where they are in the wheel and in a body graph, we can learn to interpret for us, what does that mean for us? Now, I want to emphasize what I do with these reports has not predictive astrology. I offer no advice on what someone should or could be doing. We know from human design that we are nine-centered beings. We all have our own personal authority, a home base, a solid foundation from which we can engage the world. But it is helpful for this idea of awareness, right? To see from your chart, your natal chart, where is the current transits impacting you? Is it on a defined center or an undefined center? Does it form an electromagnetic connection with the gate at the other end of a channel? I have found these in my experience to be tremendously supportive in my idea and conceptualizing of awareness. What's going on out there and how do I fit into that? But always coming back to personal authority of what that means to me. Secondly, following transits is super beneficial if you're still learning all of the 64 gates, right? Because you can take each of these planets, look at their mythology, look at their vibrational quality of what they represent in general as an archetype, and then apply that to the archetype of the gate that it's in, right? Just to read the lines in the Rave I Ching, contemplate that gate with that planet there. There can be so much information that is very stimulating, supportive, and very educational. But also to remember that I'm doing my best to explain or decode the mythology and the archetype of these planets and the gates they're in. So you're hearing it through my filter as well. I'm a 6-2 emotional manifesting generator on the left angle cross of healing. And so you're also hearing it through my perspective, my experience. And I say that because I want to encourage you to question what I say. right? That's the important thing, is that to hear it, if you're here participating in this, take it in, but question for you, what does that mean? What does that stimulate for you? Because it really comes down to that. What is the transit field offering you? And do you have anything to say about that or do about that, which is going to be based on your experience, your personal authority on how you may decide to move forward in the world. The last thing I want to share about this exercise that I do each week is that when I look at this information and prepare to offer it, I always just try to seriously take a deep breath. It's a lot to take in, but I try to put myself in my G center. You know, this magical, mystical center of higher self, love, and direction. It contains the magnetic monopole in gate 2, the most yin gate, the receptive, this one-sided magnet that is attracting the world to me. People, experiences, it was all part of the design. And so I just mention that because I think when we absorb this information, that's a beautiful place to take it in from, to recognize that our bodies know so much. The human design system is a tool. I call it a body consciousness awareness tool. And a tool is something that helps us do something, right? So, this tool helps us see ourselves in a new way, how to see how we can easily align with the natural energetic priorities that exist within us. And so from receiving this information from the place of my G center really puts me in that perspective that, I'm here for a reason. As crazy and difficult and chaotic as the world looks right now, I mean, just reading the news can be so fear-inducing. This crazy planet right now, it can be overwhelming, but yet I'm here. I'm alive. I'm breathing. And if you're watching this, so are you, which means that you have a role to play here. You are here for a reason. You are here to find purpose and meaning in your life. And so when I put myself from that perspective in my G center and I observe what's going on, I appreciate the information. All of these transits, every moment of every day, were pre-programmed to be here on this day since my birth. Whatever age and place and experience I'm at my life, it's all part of the plan. And these transits are here to teach us, to support us. They are giving us the life that we're living based on where they are on the chart. So they're all incredibly valuable. I just like to share that that is the filter that I offer it, is that they're here to support us, to learn from them, to be more aware of our experience in life. And so with all that being said, let's take a look at what's going on. And here we'll have our chart for today. And here it is, January 1st, you'll see the body graph and the astrological wheel. Now, both of these charts, every chart that I will show you this week is calculated at noon Mountain Standard Time, which is where I live in New Mexico. So I don't use house systems in astrology because that would vary. The house system would change based on your time and location. But just want to share that this is always run for noon of each day. And here we are on January 1st. And so let's start with the sun and the earth, this incredible programming agent of the sun. 70% of the neutrinos that we receive come from the sun. So it is always a good starting place. And we see that it's in gate 38, line 2. So it would have moved into gate 38 on Sunday. So here on Monday, January 1st, it's a line 2 day with the sun in gate 38 and the earth in gate 39. Now, these gates have such an interesting visual polarity, right? The sun and the earth are always a polarity in the wheel. And so we can see on the wheel over here, gate 38 with the sun, which would put the earth, which the astrological program doesn't show the earth, but it would be down here in gate 39. But how interesting when we have these two gates in the transit field, they are both in individual circuitry. They're both in the root center, our center of pressure and drive, this center of vitality that pushes us all out into life to have a new experience, a new relationship. And they're opposite each other, right? So here we have gate 38, called the gate of the fighter in the Rei Ching. It's this pressure, this drive, and it's looking over at gate 28 in the channel of struggle, a design of stubbornness, gate 28 being the gate of the game player, the risk taker. We know it's the splenic awareness center potential awareness gate, which is saying what risk is worth taking to find meaning, to find purpose. So this 38, this gate of the fighter, I also like the word persevere. Right now, it's an individual circuitry, so it is connected to this idea of the pulse, this push stop or on off, and the melancholy that comes with all gates and channels that are in the individual circuit group. But here it is, this incredible intense pressure and drive to go out and persevere with what life means to me. Right, whenever we're talking individual circuitry, we're talking about inner truth. Right up here, the keynote coming from gate 61. Well, gate 2 as well, which is an individual circuitry, but gate 61 being the gate of mystery, the mystery of what is my story. You know, individual circuitry is so personal. It's that deep, deep inner core of creativity, inspiration, melancholy, that sweet sadness that leads to these pulsated bursts of expression. And so with the sun here, this is part of what we're receiving right now, is this, it's pressuring us to have this sense of drive to find meaning. And that is a big question right now, as I was sharing previously. What is my place in the world? How do I fit in? What is my voice? And what can I do about all these problems in the world? But we can all do something, which to me is the most important, which is aligned with who we are. Being who we are, that idea in human design we often talk about of self-love, self-recognition, self-appreciation, natural alignment with our authority and our being, it changes our vibration. It changes the vibrational quality that we give off to everyone. And so right now, this week, and this 39 and 38 gates I'm talking about, these will be in effect till Friday. So we're receiving these pressures, right? This drive to find out, to move out into the world, and again, honoring our authority on how this actually physically takes place in our life. But I think certainly from a contemplation perspective, this is the message we're receiving this week. Now, gate 39 is called the gate of provocation. This is the energy to provoke, and it's provoking to find gate 55, the gate of abundance, emotional spirit, and the solar plexus. So 39 is this, again, this drive to find meaning of what abundance is, meaning of where is my fullness of emotional spirit. It's in the channel of emoting, a design of moodiness, because it's individual circuitry, right? This speaks to that pulse on and off. We can't all the time be completely emotionally, spiritually full. Right? We experience it and then it can go away. People that have this channel have this pulsating wave of their solar plexus, if it's defined, because they'll have the defined emotional chemistry of the wave. But here it would be coming from this pulse action, this spiking up and spiking down. So that's why someone born on Monday, the 1st, when we're in the right angle cross, this is the right angle cross of tension. I mean, 38 and 39 are fighting and provoking in that sense. So it can be a little bit of tension, not only for them, they carry this imprint, but they're also giving it off. But to understand how important these two individual gates are, because they're coming from this incredibly intense adrenal motor that drives us out into life, to have that inner deep core experience of finding and experiencing what our inner truth really is. Now, while we're here, I think I'll stay with the channel. This channel of emoting is defined for most of the week. This will be in effect all the way till Friday. On Saturday, the sun will move into gate 54, which puts the earth in gate 53. So we'll have a new vibrational quality once we get to next weekend. But for this week, this channel is defined. And it's defined because we have the earth in 39, and we have Saturn is still in gate 55. Now, it's been here a long time. I've been talking about Saturn in gate 55 for almost a couple of months now, because it passed through gate 55, it stopped and went retrograde in gate 55, came all the way back to line 1, where it's stationed, stopped, and moved forward again. So Saturn is moving forward in the sign of Pisces. But again, it has been in gate 55 for a long time. When we think of Saturn, which is the planet of structure and discipline, we call him the taskmaster. He is the father of time. Chronos is his name, which was how we get the word chronological, or meaning time, right? So it rules the sign of Capricorn. So he's a very structured, disciplined planet. And here he is in the planet of Pisces, which is mutable water, right? Pisces is ruled by Neptune. This is that watery world of imagination, inspiration, creativity. On its other end of the spectrum, it could even be delusion. It's just so watery, it goes on forever. So, on the one sense, Saturn can maybe seem a little bit out of place here, but not really. In fact, if you look at the Rei Ching in gate 55, Saturn is actually the exaltation in 2 out of the 6 lines. And so part of the story I've been sharing over these many weeks in these reports about Saturn in gate 55 is that I have really been interpreting this where, gate 55 being this gate of I almost want to say volatile because it's on this pulse. It can have these extreme spikes of feeling emotionally abundant or empty, glasses full or empty. It has this um, uh, up and down wave motion. But Saturn here, bringing its stability, has been offering the support to find what my dear friend Lasita Shalev calls spiritual equanimity, to find balance amongst the extremes. Gate 55 is a potential awareness gate of the solar plexus awareness center. It's a motor and an awareness center over time and patience. So having the father of time here with its strength and stability, I think has been offering a great deal of support for us to bring in structure, to find our balance, to ground ourselves in Mother Earth and find that spiritual equanimity amidst the chaos, right, which is so clearly evident in the world. There's so much trouble. But yet Saturn here for us individually, I think bringing our structured modalities, whether it be yoga or singing, writing, drawing, going for walks in nature. I think these are all good habits and structures that Saturn is saying, yes, let's apply this structure so that we can find some balance in this somewhat extreme emotional gate. And so we have Saturn and the Earth lined up in this channel of emoting. So it may bring some degree of emotionality to the week, but to remember that we can sink into that, right? That we can reflect on that to understand what are the messages? What am I getting for myself? And that's where I think this idea of being creative right now. Creativity is so powerful. Creativity is how we are digging in and touching our unique concept of inspiration. And it's very potent because of this channel. I think for all of us, there could be a really potent time for creativity and inspiration, part of all of individual circuitry. So again, super supportive, thinking about, we've got about 3 weeks left in this year, reflecting on where did I find and feel inspiration this year? What is this emotional quality? What has it brought to me? What have I learned through these experiences? And what might I think about for next year? Where would I, when I'm basing it on my authority and my true sense of foundational values, what's most important to me, right? What's coming from deep within. I think this energy this week is very supportive of that based on the Sun and Earth configuration, and Saturn will be in gate 55 for several more weeks. Once we get to the Rave New Year, actually will be in line 6, which I think is really cool that it'll be in line 6, but more to come on that later. Let's talk about the moon as well. Now, the moon moves very rapidly. So I typically only bring it up in the transit reports each day when it's significantly impacting something. But let me do mention that currently it is in Virgo in gate 64. Okay, so it's up here in the head center, the gate of confusion. I think it's really cool and interesting, though, that gate 64 is in Virgo, right? When we think of the sign of Virgo, ruled by Mercury, it's very oriented towards details and habits health habits. Virgos are great at getting things done, right? They make a to-do list and they do it, right? Everything in an order, everything has a place. It's a very organized sign, if you will. And gate 64 in the channel of abstraction and called the gate of confusion often gives it a very nebulous, right? It feels lost in this watery, it's confusing, right? But yet it's in Virgo. And so I think that's helpful to understand that, yeah, it's confused, but it's only confusing at first, that pressure, because there's so many details to sort out. But because it's in Virgo, it has that sub frequency, if you will, of the Virgo area of the sky. It's built to deal with those confusing details. So it's not confusing in a disempowering way. It's confusing in an empowering way. And here we have the moon in Virgo for the next day and a half or so as it'll move through the rest of the sign of Virgo, bringing this emotional quality to our habits and our details and how we feel, right? The moon is what we call our drive, but it's very connected to our emotions as well, right? The moon is our luminary that reflects the sun's light. So it's our reflective, reactive drive of our emotional nature out into the world. So the moon will traverse from gate 64 on Monday all the way to gate 14. So it'll move during the middle of part of the week. It'll be in the sign of Libra, cardinal air. When we think about air, it's ruled by Venus. So it's very much about relationships and harmony and balance, and it's cardinal air. So it's very communicative. And then it'll move into Scorpio. It'll traverse all the way through Scorpio. And here we have fixed water. So when we put the moon, which is a very watery nature, right? It rules Cancer, in the sign of Scorpio, we can have this deep emotional quality coming from the energy of the moon. So it does cover a lot of gates each week, but that is the general course that it will be traveling. And then to mention the nodes, now the nodes are still in gate 42 and gate 32. And they're actually going to switch gates next week. So I'm going to talk more about the nodes in next week's report. And again, the nodes always move in retrograde. So they start a gate at line 6 and move to line 1. They'll be moving into gate 57 and gate 51. So we're getting the closing story of the nodes in these two gates. They've been here for a few months. We have the south node in gate 32, called the gate of continuity. This is the instinctual awareness to know in the moment what has value in the tribe that needs to be carried forward, right? Gate 32 has the instinctual awareness to look at that gate 54 drive and determine, is this the correct drive? Is this the correct thing that will transform our tribe and up-level us? The spleen is always very conservative in nature, but once it gets something solid, and here's something 32 that assuages our fears. Gate 32 is a fear of failure of the tribe in that sense. But here, the idea of the south node here is what from our past has the value that can bring continuity that we should carry into the future. And the north node being in gate 42 over here in Aries, gate 42 is called the gate of growth. It's in the channel of maturation, a design of balanced development. So this formatting channel of the collective circuit group, this idea of moving through experiences. It's connected to the solar plexus and the sensing circuitry. So this is about starting a new experience, being in that experience, and then coming out of it. And it's about looking back later. What was the growth and maturity that came from that new cyclical experience? So the north node in gate 42 is the gate of growth. What growth may come from that? And it also speaks to, in a sense, evolution. Right? Evolution is a process. We go through life experiences, we mature, we get older, we live through things, and we may come out the other side with something that we've grown from. So we're in this line 1. So it's, again, the nodes always start at line 6 and work their way backwards. So this is a very stimulating topic in itself, to think about the nodal axis, how the lines are always moving in a direction that's opposite to all the planets. So it brings a very mystical nature. I always think of the nodes like portals, right? They're not planets, they are places in space, and they speak to this trajectory in life and where they've been for all of us. Right? We all have our nodes obviously somewhere specific in our own chart. But here in the chart of the transit, there's this message I sense from what happened back there that we need to evaluate and hold on to and carry it forward, and what needs to be pruned. Gate 32 also has this idea of elimination, right? If it doesn't have value, if it's not supporting our tribe, our family and friends and loved ones, then we need to prune it. We need to cut it off, let it go. That branch is sucking life energy away from the organism that's thriving. And so as we close out this nodal period here by next week, I think this is part of the message, understanding the foundational elements of these two gates and what needs to be pruned. And that's also very supportive when we think about this being the close of this current Rave New Year. You know, these are excellent times to reevaluate. Where am I leaking energy? Where am I spending time that's really not supporting my inner individuality, my creative inspiration? What's sucking that energy away that I can afford to let go of? Right. And so this is I think that's a supportive element to the transits this week. Let's take a look. I'm going to jump around just a little bit here. I definitely want to cover all of the planets on this Monday chart because this really grounds us into the week. And of course, as we go through each day, I'll bring up the highlights. But as I was thinking about the message of this week and the message of the chart, I actually want to go to some of these outer planets again, because I was talking about the 38 and 39 and these root pressure gates of individual circuitry. I want to talk about Pluto again. You know, Pluto has been in gate 60 for so long. It's really been, you know, it takes 248 years to go around the wheel. So it spends years in these gates. Now it is moving forward. It's already done its retrograde in gate 60, and it's in line 4. And it'll move into Aquarius on January 20th, which is big news in the astrological world, right? When we think about it from an astrological sign perspective, we are closing out Pluto in Capricorn. It's been there for 15 years. It came into Capricorn in 2008. What's going to happen on January 20th is Pluto, here at the final degree of Capricorn, is going to move into Aquarius. However, it's not going to be there a long time. It's going to turn retrograde again early next year, early spring, move back into Capricorn. It won't come back into Aquarius for good until November of next year. So we still have almost a year of this back and forth due to the retrograde before Pluto is firmly planted in Aquarius for the next 20 years. So we've got a big change coming on some sense. It's hard to say. You know, Pluto is so slow moving. We talk about planets and their collective energy because they have a strong collective force in the world. But individually, they also have a strong presence, and Pluto has this really deep inner psychological relationship to us, right? It's the planet of death, rebirth, transformation. It's an incredibly powerful planet, and we only get to experience a slice of one of its transits around the sun because it's 248 years. So, you know, we may get a third of its one transit. But wherever it crosses our personal chart, these are transformative aspects that Pluto forms. And Pluto has this energy to really transform us. And to me, that transformation is really the stripping of our ego. And I mean that from an ego sense and from a imagined ego, like the not self ego, like who we think we want to be. Pluto's here to pull us back on track at a very deep psychological level. To really, I think, when it has its particular transits to an individual chart, it's bringing some degree of death and rebirth to get us back on our incarnation path, our soul's journey the true hero's journey. So Pluto has a very transforming quality to wherever it is touching in the chart. And so I say all that because here it is in the channel of mutation, a design that fluctuates and initiates. This is the formatting channel of all individual circuitry. So it has incredible power within the human design body graph, this channel. And gate 60 is called the gate of acceptance, also called the gate of limitations. And so Pluto to me really resonates with this channel. I mean, as a planet by itself, it is the planet of death, rebirth, mutative transformation, and it's been in the channel of mutation. So it just, again, has this vibrational resonance with the energy of this channel. So it's been very important here. Again, very much so for the world, whatever we're going through, who knows, it's so chaotic, but yet we can feel in a sense at a deep level that there we are going through massive changes. And of course, from human design, we know a lot of that has to do with the evolutionary shift of 2027. It is right around the corner. So even though the actual news events of the day can seem quite terrifying, things are happening to get us on to the next stage, right? This 2027 is a big shift. And so, and from an evolutionary perspective, which happens very slow over thousands and hundreds and then thousands of years, we're seeing that happen in real time in our life. And so Pluto, I think, is a big part of that, whatever it's doing here in gate 60. Now, if we take that to a personal level, though, and bring it back to this deep inner psychological aspect of each of ourselves, I think it's shining a light on this idea of acceptance. You know, what do we perceive to be our greatest limitation? What is that thing? You know, whether it's something that comes from childhood conditioning or a traumatic experience, you know, whatever that thing is for each of us, but to think about that thing that gives us that negative voice that's really held us back. And here Pluto is offering this possible death and rebirth of that experience based on where we are now. You know, it's like, how do we learn to accept that, whatever that means to each of us, to accept whatever this limitation that has been holding me back, yet also now with Pluto here for its time that it'll be there, bringing its power to mutate and possibly transform that into part of what our strength can be. You know, it has the sense of that chironic wound, you know, taking a wound and alchemizing it into our greatest strength. Well, Pluto is part of that story right now in gate 60. And also to notice how all three root individual gates are activated this week. That's pretty extraordinary. You know, this is, again, just speaks to that theme I've been sharing, which is, what am I here to do? You know, individual circuitry. What is my truth? What is my mythology? And to spend time there, right? The planets between the sun and the earth and the Pluto, they're locking us in here in that root center going, what are you going to use that energy for? You know, what's it about? And I think it's some opportunity for incredibly stimulating contemplations. So sticking with that individual circuitry, let's move to gate 34. What's happened here is Venus has been in gate 34 for a few days now. And it's over here at the early degrees of Sagittarius. And so when we think of Venus, the planet, it's passions and desires and values. You know, Venus is what we want. It's such a beautiful planet. But we can really think, the keynotes I often think of is my passion. Where's my juice? You know, what do I want? You know, we can look to our chart and see Venus and get a sense of that. Well, here we have it in more individual circuitry. This incredible, powerful gate called the gate of power, the gate of might, the power to individuate. It's part of integration field, right? This is the sacral life force energy centers, individuated power to stand up for whatever one believes is their truth, right? So very, very powerful gate to have Venus in, the power of our passions and our emotions. And what I want to point out from an astrological perspective is that Venus is in Sagittarius at the 3rd degree, well, Saturn is over here in 3 degrees Pisces. So we're seeing that Venus and Saturn on Monday here are in an exact square. And interestingly, in the Rave Mandala, gate 55 and gate 34, they are exactly 90 degrees from each other. So these two gates are connected in that sense, from that perspective. Not only are they both in individual circuitry, but in the wheel, they form an exact square aspect. When we talk about squares, we're talking about dynamic energy. The idea that something needs to happen, something needs to change, something needs to be resolved. I often say it's kind of like two cars speeding towards an intersection together. If nothing changes, we're going to have a big accident. Something's got to adjust. Something's got to evolve, change, mutate, if you will. You know, the channel of mutation, gate 60, gate 3, those two gates are also a square in the wheel. It really speaks to that vibrational quality of the channel of mutation. Well, these two gates, they're not in the same channel, but they're in that similar vibrational relationship, conversation. And so we have everything I was saying about Saturn in gate 55, this structured ability to find spiritual equanimity and equilibrium, emotional equilibrium, to find that balance. But we have Venus, the planet of passions and desires and personal harmony, in the gate of might. Right? So we can see this connection between how there's this energy through passionate zeal to stand up in what my power is, connected to what my emotional abundance is. So this vibrational quality is very strong right now on Monday, and for a few days more. But just again, what does that stimulate? What does that contemplate? Thinking about gate 34 and gate 55 and individual circuitry, more questions, I think, right? We're just seeing how many individual gates are activated. Let me just circle them again to bring emphasis to what is taking place in the final few weeks of this rave year of 2023. And then we can also see up here, the other individual gate still activated is Uranus in gate 23, line 1. It's over here in Taurus. Now it's still in retrograde. For those of you that have been following along these past month or so, all of the outer planets were all retrograde at the same time. So there was that period in the fall when there kind of was that feeling like nothing's going anywhere. Like we were having a lot of individual circuitry. All the planets were in retrograde. I myself was just feeling like, where's the movement here? Well, one by one, each of these outer planets have stopped and started moving forward. And the only one that's still in retrograde is Uranus. But it too has slowed down and is coming to a stop. And it will begin moving forward on January 27th. Okay, so right after the Rave New Year, Uranus will also begin moving forward. But it's gone as far backwards as it's going to go in the chart. So in other words, it went through gate 23, stopped, moved backward over 23, and stationed on line 1. So I always feel like when there's a retrograde movement of planets, wherever they go back to and stop and then turn forward, those lines hold special significance in relation to that planet, right? For one, they stay there longer. I mean, they appear to stop in the sky. And so it's like they're giving their energy to that place in the sky. And it's almost like their inertia is bringing tremendous power to the line that it's in. When planets are moving forward, some of that forward momentum, that energy is going in a new direction. But when they're stopped, it's really like planting its flag here, going, let's look at this. And here we're speaking about Uranus, which is the planet of unusualness, right? Suddenness, out of nowhere. It's very innovative. It's very creative. We don't know where it's going to strike. It's kind of like lightning, just out of nowhere brings this sudden thunder of change. So I think as a planet, Uranus really resonates with individual circuitry as a whole, right? It just kind of has a similar concept, similar vibrational quality. And here it is in individual circuitry, gate of assimilation. This gate speaks to individual creative expression, right? It's in the channel of structuring, a design of individuality, the genius to freak channel we talk about. Well, here we have the planet of unusualness in the throat gate expression of unusualness. We don't know what's going to come out here. Individual expression is speaking inner truth, which is different for all of us. But I really have appreciated this most unusual planet spending so much time in this most unusual gate. So again, beautiful time to contemplate what this experience is. Always following authority. I have to feel like I have to keep mentioning that as we move along the report here. Not suggesting what anyone does with this energy. I'm just sharing that this is an incredible time to think about my voice in relation to all these other individual gates. What is the biggest limitation that I perceive for myself that would be helpful if I accepted that it happened to me for a reason, and that I can use the power of that acceptance? Maybe forgiveness is required too, could involve another person, but it's a deep individual core, this root center activity. And how would I use my energy, gate 38 and 39, and my power, gate 34, to express myself in my most empowering, creative way? Well, this is a wonderful time to be thinking about those things. The planets at the close of this rave year are stimulating us in that way. So really fertile time to dig into what one perceives to be their contribution to the world right now. What our place, why am I here? Who am I in this place right now? I think this is the stimulation that we're getting from these planets. Just to mention Neptune, since I haven't brought Neptune up, because it's been in 36, feeling like forever. It's been like almost 3 years, I think. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it too is finally moving forward, right? It is in the line of transition, line 3, which indicates the end of the darkening of the night. So maybe that illusory world of dreams and inspiration, maybe we are moving forward. It's hard to interpret Neptune, right? It's that illusion we don't know. But for ourselves, Neptune is very powerful for our own personal creativity. We can call on these planets, just like calling on our allies or spirit guides or whatever you might call things that you believe in, pray to, or ask to support you from the other world. Well, Neptune and all of these planets are there for us for that reason. And Neptune can be called upon to explore this imagination and inspiration that the other planets are guiding us into this week. And it's in this gate of crisis, we call it, but it's the evolution of crisis. This is the primary manifesting channel that it's bringing change into the world. So it's going to be coming something in this collective channel. Where do I fit into that? And to use our imagination and the dream world of Neptune to support us in that process. And along with Saturn, as I said, having Saturn down here in 55. Both, it's in the home sign of Neptune's in its home sign of Pisces, and Saturn is visiting us there. But I just really appreciate, again, to me, I just want to say one more time, I think Saturn, when I look at the whole chart, to me, man, it's somewhere to go right now. It's the linchpin. And I think that's important for me to emphasize, because when it moves out of gate 55 right after the rave new year, it's not going to come back here for 28 and a half years. It's already done its retrograde motion in this area of the chart. So this is sort of the next coming few weeks are the last chance here to get the gifts of Saturn in gate 55. And I think there are many to be had through one's own contemplation. And then to talk about gate 11, we have Mars here, right? Finishing up the final degrees of Sagittarius. Now, I'm going to talk more about Mars when we get to Tuesday, January 2nd, because it's going to form a channel with Venus. But I want to cover one more topic that'll take me a few more minutes before I wrap up Monday. Oh, and then actually, before I get to that, I need to mention one other individual gate. Chiron is still in gate 51. Very important. Now, Chiron doesn't get an activation in our body graphs, but I personally, as a line 6 being, feel very connected to Chiron. And so I always like to look at where it's at. It still has a message, even though it doesn't cause an activation. here it is in the gate of shock, in the channel of initiation. And I think it's important because we're looking at so many powerful individual gates being imprinted and activated during this current time period. Here we have Chiron, this idea of the wounded healer in the channel of initiation, which is that idea that the ego can be initiated into the higher self, whatever we perceive that place of ourselves to be, higher self, love and direction, the initiation into that. So very potent, powerful time. Well, not only that, but on Monday, let me just add this to the mix. The moon is quincunx Chiron. So this emotional world of the moon is stimulating in a frictional way. A quincunx is sort of a kind of a sandpapery way, if you will, but it's stimulating that Chiron in the gate of shock. But having Chiron here, very important, right? Because Chiron is, I think, asking us, have we had some sort of shock or trauma or experience or a past relationship where there needs to be healing? Does there need to be self-forgiveness, forgiveness of the other? Chiron really speaks to all of these thematics and images. So Chiron also here in this individual channel, offering us the opportunity at the close of the new year, or of this year, where could I find greater forgiveness for myself? How can I appreciate that experience, take responsibility for it, and also hopefully through that cathartic process of healing, be able to forgive others, to accept others. Big message in the chart right now. Okay, and then the last thing I want to mention about Monday is that our friend Mercury, who has been going retrograde I'm looking for the date here. I don't have the exact date. I'm going to just talk about it. Okay, so here's Mercury. You can see it's in red, so it's still in retrograde. Mercury is stopping right now on Monday and is going to turn forward on Monday evening, my time, so like around 6 p.m. So it has reached gate 26, line 6. Now, we had a lot of activity with gate 26 because the sun went through here and Mars has gone through here. So there was a few weeks past where I was spending a lot of time talking about the gate of the egoist. And what's important is that Mercury, we have this term in astrology where we call it entering its shadow. And what that means is when Mercury was going forward, it got to gate 26, line 6. And then it went all the way through gate 11, gate 10, and gate 58, and it went to 58, line 5, and then it stopped again. That was on December 13th. So let me give you some dates so that you can contemplate this. Now, Mercury retrogrades are quite common. They happen 3 to 4 times every year. Now, they happen so often because Mercury is very close to the sun. It goes all the way around the sun every 88 days. So, but I want to start with thinking about Mercury from its mythological standpoint. This was the fleet-footed messenger of the gods. Mercury was the god that could communicate with everybody. He could go into the underworld, into Hades, and communicate there, and then he could go and communicate with the gods, the immortal gods, and everyone in between. So Mercury, mythologically, represents not only our verbal communication and our mental conceptualization. So we can think of it very ajna, throat related in that sense, but he was very adaptable, quick, rules Gemini, right? The twins, rules Virgo, but wherever we see Mercury is quick-witted, analytical, fast talker, can communicate easily, very adaptable with its expression, and so it speaks to our ability to communicate. It also, because it's so close to the sun, and the fact that it goes around the sun so fast. In fact, in an astrological chart, this is an interesting thing to know if you are not aware, but the sun in a birth chart is always within 28 degrees of the sun. So if you look at your astrological chart, your Mercury is either going to be in the same sign as your sun, it's going to be in the sign before your sun, or it's going to be in the sign after your sun. It will not be anywhere else in the chart. And again, that's due to the astronomical aspects of how it works. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. But when you think about that, I want you to get the mythology of that, is that Mercury is here to support our communication. It's here to work with the sun, which is, we think of the sun as our life force energy, how we shine out into the world, right? Where we get most of our neutrinos. This is our life force energy wherever our sun is located. And Mercury is always close to the sun in that sense, the storyline that I'm using. So it's always there. It's always supporting, helping that life force energy communicate itself out into the world. So when we go through these retrograde periods, this, again, Mercury is always very close to the sun when that happens. It's based on that. That's why it astronomically happens. But it's a great time for reflection. In pop astrology, you often hear, in the newspaper or the radio, it's like, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, computers are going to break, there's going to be travel delays, no one can understand each other. I mean, there's certainly an element of truth with that. These are, areas that Mercury rules. It rules commerce and money and communication and technology and all these things. So those things can happen. But I think it's important to really think about Mercury retrogrades at a deeper, personal, mythological level. When Mercury goes in retrograde, it is offering us all an opportunity to reflect and review and reevaluate what we're dealing with, whatever that happens to be for each individual person, whether it's something in your work or your relationship or whatever it's about. These retrograde periods are really beautiful times to really go back over that, take that pause, take that deep breath. Now, in the chart, what happened was, it, as I said earlier, entered its shadow at gate 26, line 6. So it moved all through gate 11, all through gate 10, gate 58, line 5. Now, it started that shadow period on November 25th. And I'm saying the dates because if you have something you've been contemplating and looking for some sort of illumination, I want to give you a time period when maybe, again, this is not predictive astrology, but I'm speaking mythologically, how these planets work. Something started in November 25th and it went forward and then it stopped in gate 58, line 5, and on December 13th. And since December 13, it's been moving backwards all the way through 58, all the way through 10, all the way through 11, back to 26, line 6. And it's going to stop here today and move forward. Then from January 1st, it's going to do the third pass, right? It went forward, it went backward, and now it's going to traverse these same gates and lines for the third time. And it will finally exit that shadow. Again, I'm talking about the terrain in the wheel that it's passed 3 times. It will exit that segment of the chart on January 19th. So from January 1st to January 19th, again, beautiful time to be contemplating these reflections of what Mercury's been doing in your chart, particularly if you have any of these gates, right? If they're part of your definition, that means something. If they're undefined gates, that means something too. And that's something that your own contemplations and your own questions you're asking yourself. But this is a really important area of the wheel to contemplate between now and the Rave New Year, right? This idea of gate 11. To me, gate 11 is the most archetypal gate of Sagittarius. It's the gate of ideas, right? It's where Mars is wrapping up its time right now in line 6. But Mercury was going to enter gate 11 on the next day, on Tuesday. And so this gate of ideas, these, Ra used to say, white magical ideas, like it's based on our past, right? What our past experiences get processed in the channel of abstraction, and they can emerge in our ajna as these ideas. We could do this, we could do that. It has this incredible Sagittarian optimism. Right now, Mercury in Sagittarius is actually in its detriment, which is funny. I mean, it rules Gemini, so in its opposite sign, it's in detriment, but I think that's supportive. Detriments are not bad. They just bring a new layer of understanding. And the understanding here is that Mercury, which is so acutely aware of the details, it kind of loses the details here, right? It gets more high-minded. It gets more philosophical. And we need that in gate 11. Gate 11 is like, what's possible? What are we curious about? Channel of curiosity. What have we been seeking that we can now express in a stimulating way about our new direction, right? What could we do based on these past experiences? And so, yeah, Mars is finishing up right there now. Mercury's going to go in there tomorrow. And so, yeah, Mercury's here communicating to us to ask these questions. What are my highest ideals? Based on my life so far, what's possible? You know, what is my deep inner truth? And what is my greatest creative inspirational idea that I might come up with through this? And it's very supportive to be asking yourself these questions right now. And then it's going to go through gate 10, the third time, right? This gate of self-love, gate of behavior, part of integration circuitry. But we also say it's about this idea of love of the self, the higher self. Right? How do I love myself? Am I nurturing myself? Do I take care of myself? Important questions to be reviewing right now. And then into gate 58, the gate of drive, the joyous, called the aliveness, the drive, the pressure to experience joy. What do you think about that? Whether you have the gate or not, you're going to get it temporarily. I mean, it's not that you're supposed to do anything about it, but these transits are very stimulating for contemplating this. And now that Mercury's done its 1, 2, 3 dance through these 3 gates, what a potent time as we close out this year to think about what are my highest ideals? How do I take care and love myself and behave according to my authority that can support those values of my highest ideals? And where do I get the energy and the drive to be alive as I go get them based on authority? Very potent archetypal gates to close out the Rave New Year. And we're still moving. We'll talk about in gate 38 this week, right? I'm talking about Mercury so much, but let's add on to that story because the sun in gate 38, as I was saying, what's the drive? What am I willing to persevere through, right? For these high-minded gate 11 ideas and the values that mean something to me. And then we'll get to have these last few gates before we get to gate 41. And once the sun's in gate 41, that will be the launch of the Rave New Year. So following the sun through Capricorn here, and again, just using the keynoting to stimulate reflection, contemplation can really produce some really what I find to be empowering insights. Because I think you've heard in my sharing so far, going through where we're starting the week off on Monday, there is a lot of potentially empowering information going on in the weather right now.